our working group is kind of a wide variety of people. There's Bob Morrison and myself, and then we've asked Jim McKean from Iowa State, because he is a lawyer and a veterinarian and has also worked extensively with pseudorabies and designing and establishing a lot of the regulations on how that disease was handled and regulated. So we've looked to him for some insight as well. Plus, he's also worked on an Iowa project too. And then Josh Trenery is from the Indiana pork producers. He's been very, very helpful because he is actually another lawyer. But he was very pivotal in setting up Indiana's hold harmless agreements and confidentiality information. So I'll discuss some of the things they're doing in a little bit, but they've had a very unique situation of working with their state veterinarian and Board of Animal Health, working with the pork producers on their regional elimination projects, and obviously confidentiality is central to how many people participate, what they participate with, and how comfortable they are with the whole process. I've added University of Pennsylvania's Ag Law Department. We've asked them to be a member so they are informed of what we're doing. However, at this time they said they're just kind of waiting to see what happens. So we still copy them on information. They've been interested in how especially non-regulatory diseases are handled, so hopefully we'll get more active participation from them in the future. So back to a brief history. Obviously, things like pseudorabies, foreign animal diseases are program diseases in the U.S. and are regulated by the government. So as such, producers are pretty willing and do provide and share information about their sites and premises for disease status. So that's expected, that's given. You know, people really even now don't question a lot of things that go on even behind the scenes. You know, there's assumptions that the government provides protection for that information through the various means and mechanisms. And then also the information is really for the greater good of the industry, essentially to eliminate a disease. Where we get into the gray area is the non-programmatic diseases, because there's really no outline, protocol, procedure that lists how we handle these. And as we saw with influenza, a lot of these diseases are subject to market intervention. We saw that back with influenza and how negatively that impacted the swine industry. And the fact is, it wasn't even our fault. So there are some significant considerations, both economically and even just societally, to having people identified on a map. The big one right now is there are limited precedents of what happens if a disease is diagnosed, and then what is the reaction, both from the market, from your neighbors, from industry, from the packers. There's a lot of unknowns when we deal with these non-programmatic diseases. So, who wants to be a dot on the map? And you start to ask that producers, and they all head for the back door. So it's something that we're trying to be very, very cognizant of as we look at asking people to share information. So what have we been doing? We haven't been just sitting around wondering about the needs. We've had a lot of different meetings with a lot of different groups of people, especially those that have been a lot more active than we have been, for example, as National Pork Board. So we went to some of the key folks, Bob Morrison, for example, Bob Rowland. As they are developing and working through PERS-CAP projects, we wanted to find out from them what are some of the core things that people are requiring out of these confidentiality measures. So we had a meeting in May, well, early in April, with just a few people. Barry Ringelheim was very gracious, Dale was very gracious to come and provide what they're doing from data management and confidentiality management, and that was very helpful too. So we got a lot of things together. We know we needed some templates and guidelines, and at least to have tools for producers to be able to see what different groups are doing. So we had that, and we decided as a group that yes, this was needed. From another standpoint, we worked with our Swine Health Committee, which is an internal committee within Pork Board. They're very concerned about confidentiality from a general, broader perspective of disease surveillance. So we wanted to discuss what are some of the legal ramifications for anyone who wants to participate in a voluntary disease program. We had our legal counsel provide some information to us. We also talked with USDA in August on some of the very same issues, because as we look at PERS elimination, right now we've talked about it as a voluntary effort. We really haven't brought in the G word, government. However, I think as we look down the road, we would be remiss not to take advantage of some of the overall national surveillance things that are in place, and I think it's something that's going to have to be discussed in the future at some point in time. So through some of those discussions, I do have in your proceedings some of the different legal protections that are available for information, and I won't go through all of those, but I tried to summarize the best I could. But there are things in the Farm Bill that do protect producer information. There's always the caveat, though, of disease programs and how much information can or cannot be held into confidence. So with all this said, we felt it was a really significant issue in order to get people to participate in any kind of voluntary program. So as talking with PERSCAP and other groups, AASV, as well as USDA, we really thought we needed to have some more tools available for people. So again, we talked with Bob earlier this summer and convened a small working group, and we're trying to get information on the PERS.org website. We have several templates of both hold harmless agreements and confidentiality agreements. You can see several states that have provided that information. Really what our goal is to have information out there. We're not saying this is the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it or this is the only way to do it. It's more of if you're working on a regional group or wanting to start one up, here are some examples of what other people have done. Now, in our working group, the smaller working group, we have had several folks that say, you know, do we even really need to have those? And that's also another option for people to participate. Jim McKean had brought up, you know, he said in some of the groups that they have, people don't even want to have an agreement. They'd rather have a farmer's agreement, producer's agreement, shake hands, you know you're participating and be done with it. However, there's a lot of other folks that aren't quite as willing to go that route. They want to know that their information won't be shared unduly with other folks that are not in the same group or somebody that wants to try to harm them for some reason or another. So our goal with the whole confidentiality and issues is trying to be able to provide tools and at least some of the background of what protections are available out there. So it's a really complex issue, and I've probably blown through it very quickly. But again, it is a huge issue. I think it's probably one of the bigger stumbling blocks that for people not to come in and participate because they're not sure of what information is going to be shared or not. One of the things I have heard consistently when we've met with different groups and in different working groups and even larger meetings is just the need for overall communication. It's really critical, even if you have confidentiality or hold harmless agreements, is to go over with your groups what are the positive sides, the upsides, what are the downsides, what are the things that you might expect that may be adverse outcomes. You know, Bob's talked several times about having basically neighbors that have been lifelong friends not become friends over our farm status issues. So I think we are doing a complete job of informing producers when they sign up that there are some side effects that could occur from this. It can happen from anything, but it is very, very important just to communicate all the different things that can go on within these projects that may or may not be expected. So really, here's for me where the rubber hits the road. It's looking at some of these questions of, you know, for those of you that are working within regional projects, what's working well so far? What's not? You know, what have you done that may be different from what's been talked about before? And then really, how much risk is perceived in each of your respective groups? Is this a big deal? Is it not a big deal? And how do we mitigate some of those risks, or can we? I think what additional tools are needed, because again, our goal is to try to be able to provide as many of those active tools on the PERS.org website that we can. And then how do you want those? Is the PERS.org website enough? Is there other mechanisms that are needed? Is there PowerPoint presentations, CDs? And I would like to get feedback from you all on a lot of this.